This is the story of Soren, a young barn owl who believed in legends when everyone around him told him to stop. He lived in the forest kingdom of Tito with his family, his father Noctis, his mother Mela, his older brother Clud, and his little sister Eglantine. Their caretaker was a snake named Mrs. Plithiver, who had looked after the family for as long as anyone could remember. It was a simple life, a safe life, but it was about to change completely. Every night before sleep, Soren listened to stories about the guardians of Gahuli, legendary warrior owls who lived in a great tree beyond the sea and protected the world from darkness. Soren had heard these stories so many times that the pages of the books had worn thin, but he never got tired of them. He wanted to believe that warriors like that truly existed, that the world had heroes in it. Clud did not share his brother's wonder. He was tired of the stories. Tired of being reminded every day that Soren was the better flyer, the more gifted one, the one everyone noticed first. The jealousy had been building in him for a long time, quiet and heavy, like a stone he carried everywhere. One night after their parents fell asleep, Soren whispered to Clud and called him out to practice flying. The two brothers climbed to the highest branches and began jumping between them. Soren moved through the air with natural ease. Clud struggled. His wings wouldn't cooperate. His landings were clumsy, and watching his younger brother glide effortlessly only made everything worse. When Soren tried to help by telling Clud to move like the legendary warrior Lies of Kiel, Clud snapped. He said he was sick of hearing about legends. An argument broke out between them on the branch, and then both of them fell. They hit the forest floor hard and lay there in the dark, catching their breath. Then a Tasmanian devil appeared from the shadows. Clud tried to stand between it and his brother, but was knocked aside instantly. Soren found himself surrounded with nowhere to go. Then two large owls dropped from the trees above and drove the devil away. For just a moment, Soren felt relief. Then the owls grabbed both brothers and lifted them into the air. Their names were Jat and Jut. They were soldiers of the Pure Ones, and they were taking the brothers to a place called St. Aegolius. Clud tried to bite through Jut's grip and break free. The soldier barely flinched. He told Clud to stop struggling. They would arrive soon enough. The journey to St. Aegolius was long. Along the way, other owls joined the group, each one carrying a captured young owl. One of them was a small pygmy owl named Gylfi, quick-eyed, sharp, and clearly furious about being taken. She had been captured by a boreal owl named Grimble, who flew in silence and gave nothing away. When they finally landed at the mountain, a queen owl named Naira stepped forward and addressed the new arrivals. She told them that from this day on, they would serve the Pure Ones and their king, Metalbeak. Soren and Gylfi refused immediately. They asked to be taken home. Naira looked at them for a long moment. Then she had them sent to the Pelatorium, a dark cave known as the Pit, where they would work as scavengers, picking through the discarded food scraps of the Pure Ones. It was the lowest position in the mountain, a punishment designed to break the spirit. Clud watched his brother being taken away, and he made a different choice. He saw an opportunity, a chance to finally prove that he was strong, capable, and worth something on his own terms. He stayed behind. He chose the Pure Ones. Inside the pit, Soren and Gylfi discovered what their job actually was. The pellets, the compressed food scraps that owls cough up after eating, sometimes contained a type of glowing crystal called a fleck. The scavengers had to sort through enormous piles of pellets and find these flecks. Soren was given a sample and sent into the cave where a large bag of them was stored. The moment he entered, a powerful magnetic energy yanked the crystal from his grip and pulled it straight into the bag. He barely had time to react before a bat swooped in, picked up the bag without any effect from the magnetism, and carried it away. Something about the flecks bothered Soren. The energy they gave off was unlike anything he had felt before, and whatever the Pure Ones were collecting them for, it wasn't good. That night, he and Gylfi noticed another young owl standing perfectly still, staring at the moon with empty eyes. Gylfi recognized it immediately. She called it moon blinking. What happened when an owl spent too long gazing at the full moon? The owl lost its own mind and replaced it with whatever its master wanted. No will of its own, no memory of who it was. Soren and Gylfi made a promise to each other right then. No matter what happened, no matter how tired or broken they felt, they would never look at the moon. They would stay themselves. The next morning, Jat and Jut put the new scavengers to work. The pellets were everywhere, mountains of them, and the two young owls began sorting through them while trying not to think about home. Then Grimble appeared. He looked at the two of them carefully, looking specifically for something. He was checking to see if they had been moon-blinked. When he confirmed they hadn't, he took them quietly to a hidden part of the cave and spoke in a low voice. Soren tensed immediately. He didn't trust any soldier of the Pure Ones, but what Grimble said next stopped him. Grimble was not a Pure One by choice. Years ago, the Pure Ones had invaded his land and captured his family. They kept his family alive as a guarantee. As long as he served them loyally, his family would not be harmed. He had no way out, but he had made a private vow. He would help every owl who had not been moon-blinked to escape. He told Soren and Gylfi that he would teach them to fly properly, and when the time was right, he would get them out. Soren looked at Gylfi. She gave a small nod. They agreed. Meanwhile, in another part of the mountain, Clud was training alongside other selected owls under Nyra's direct instruction. She pushed them through flying drills and combat techniques day after day. Clud absorbed every lesson with complete focus. This was the first time in his life that someone was training him seriously, treating him like he had real potential. He wanted to be worthy of it. The final test came when Nyra released a small blue bird into the air. Whichever recruit caught it would earn a place in the army. Clud flew with everything he had learned. One of the other recruits threw a rock at him mid-flight. Clud didn't stop. He pushed the rival aside and closed his talons around the bird. Nyra looked at him with something close to approval. She asked if his brother could fly like that. Clud hesitated, and then lied. He said Soren had never been able to fly properly, that he was always falling from trees. Nyra did not believe him. She had already heard otherwise. She sent for Soren. Soren was still in the pit with Gylfi when the soldiers came for him. On the way, he saw his brother, and for one moment he thought Clud had found a way to help him. But the look on Clud's face told him something different. Before Nyra could speak, Grimble appeared and acted immediately. He had seen them coming and knew this was the moment. He stood between Nyra and the two young owls and refused to hand them over. Nyra ordered him to step aside. Grimble attacked her instead. What followed was brief and violent. Grimble was older and slower than he once was, but he was skilled in a way that surprised even the queen. He knocked her back with a series of precise strikes and bought precious seconds. Then he turned to Soren and Gylfi and told them to run, to jump from the cave, to fly to the guardians of Gahula who were hiding beyond the Sea of Hulamir. Soren turned and saw his brother one more time. He called to Clud, begged him to come with them. Clud looked back. Then he stepped forward and stood beside Nyra. He helped her fight Grimble. Soren turned away and jumped. He and Gylfi fell toward the cliff face below. In that terrifying plunge, Grimble's lessons took over. Their wings opened, caught the air, and they flew. Genuinely flew, for the first time, away from the mountain and into open sky. Behind them, Grimble held Nyra off for as long as he could. The two of them fought at the edge of the mountain, and then both fell. Grimble did not survive the fall. Nyra did. She pulled herself up, looked at the empty sky where the two young owls had disappeared, and called her soldiers to give chase. But Soren and Gylfi had already found a narrow gap in a cave wall and slipped through it. Too small for the soldiers to follow. They were free. They rested in a forest not far from the coast. A burrowing owl named Digger found them first. Curious and kind, happy for the company, he took them to his home and introduced them to his companion, a large gray owl named Twilight, who immediately announced that he had brought dinner for everyone. He held up his catch, which turned out to be Mrs. Plithiver, Soren's family snake. She was completely unharmed and very happy to see him. Soren held her close and told her everything. The Pure Ones, the pit, the moon blinking, Clud's betrayal, Grimble's sacrifice, and where they were going. Mrs. Plithiver, Digger, and Twilight all looked at each other. Then they looked at Soren. They said they would come with him. The group set off for the Sea of Hulamir. Back at St. Aegolius, Nyra rewarded Clud's loyalty with a position in Metalbeak's army, but first he needed to replace Soren in the pit. He suggested his younger sister, Eglantine. Nyra agreed without hesitation and sent soldiers to Tito immediately. The little owl was captured and brought to the mountain, and when Eglantine asked Clud to take her home, when she stood in front of her own brother and begged, Clud told her to look at the full moon. She had no choice after that. Her eyes went blank. Her will disappeared. She became exactly what Nyra needed her to be. Soren's group reached the coast and stood at the edge of the Sea of Hulamir. An ancient echidna appeared from the rocks beside them and said he had been expecting them. He told them a prophecy, that a group of strangers would find each other and travel as family to seek the guardians. But the sea crossing would push them to their absolute limit. Even when they felt they had nothing left, they would still be only halfway. Soren listened and said they would go anyway. Hours into the crossing, a heavy snowstorm came out of nowhere. The wind turned the air white. Ice formed on their wings. Digger, the smallest of the group, began to slow down. His wings became heavier with each moment. Then he stopped rising. He fell through the clouds and disappeared below. Soren dove after him but couldn't see through the storm. The waves churned beneath. Gylfi and Twilight searched alongside him. There was no sign of Digger anywhere. Then a massive snowy owl broke through the clouds, and Digger was safe in its talons. A second snowy owl appeared beside it and invited the group to follow. They crossed the remaining sea and landed inside a vast fortress built among enormous ancient trees. This was the great tree of Gahul. This was real. The two snowy owls were Boron and Baran, the king and queen of the Guardians. They listened to Soren and Gylfi's story in full. When Soren finished, the king's advisor, a sharp-eyed owl named Alamir, said the story was impossible, that the Pure Ones were a myth, that Saint Aegolius was abandoned, but one of the oldest guardians in the tree, a battle-worn owl who said very little, spoke up quietly and told the king to investigate before dismissing anything. The king agreed and sent Alamir to verify the story personally. After the meeting, a young owl named Autulissa showed Soren and the others to their quarters. Soren looked at her and felt something he hadn't expected to feel. He asked her what it took to become a guardian. She told him it would be the hardest thing he ever did. He said he would do it. Training began the next morning. Navigation by stars, combat with swords and talons, reading storms, reading the land below in complete darkness. Soren pushed himself every single day. The old guardian, whose name Soren eventually discovered was Ezelrib, watched him with careful eyes and said little. One evening, Ezelrib took Soren and the others out into a raging storm and told them to feel the air, not to fight it, but to become part of it. Soren closed his eyes and let the wind take him. For one extraordinary moment, time slowed down. The rain moved around him. The wind became something he could read and use instead of something trying to destroy him. Then he lost focus and nearly hit the sea. Ezelrib caught him and said he had potential, that he needed more work, that he should keep going. Later, alone in the library, Soren found a book about the Battle of the Ice Claws, the great legendary battle he had heard about his whole life. But this version was darker than any story his father had ever told him. It described the real cost, the real loss. He went to Ezelrib's quarters to ask about it, and found something he did not expect. The old guardian's injured eye, the specific scar, the battle-worn way he carried himself. Ezelrib was Lies of Kiel. The legendary warrior Soren had dreamed of meeting his entire life had been standing beside him this whole time. Before he could fully absorb this, Alamir returned from St. Aegolius, but he had not come back alone. He had brought 2 captured owls from the mountain. One of them was Eglantine, blank-eyed, unresponsive, completely moon-blinked. Soren looked at his sister, and his chest broke open. Alamir confirmed everything Soren had said about the Pure Ones, and warned that they were stronger than anyone had understood. The king summoned all the guardians immediately, and ordered them to move on St. Aegolius before the Pure Ones could become any stronger. Soren asked to come. Ezelrib refused. He told Soren he was not ready, that his job right now was to stay with his sister. The guardians flew. Soren stayed behind. He sat with Eglantine and talked to her softly. He apologized for not being there when she was taken. He told her he was sorry. He didn't know if she could hear him. Then her eyes blinked. Something in his voice had reached past the moon blinking, past whatever wall had been built inside her mind. She came back slowly, one breath at a time. She looked at him and recognized him. She told him what had happened. The soldiers coming to Tito, being taken to the mountain, and then Clud, her own brother, telling her to look at the moon. She had trusted him completely. Soren closed his eyes. He held very still. Then he stood up. He told Gylfi and the others that the guardians were flying into a trap. Alamir was a spy. He had brought them to St. Aegolius on purpose, straight into whatever metal beak had prepared for them. They had to go, now. King Boron and the guardians had already entered the mountain by the time Soren's group arrived. Inside, they found the owlets that had been taken, dozens of moon-blinked young owls, used and discarded. The guardians moved to help them, and then the bats opened the compartments. The flex poured out, and the magnetic energy hit every owl in the cave simultaneously. The guardians collapsed to the ground, unable to move, unable to fight. Every single one of them, including Ezelrib. Alamir stepped forward and revealed himself openly. It had all been a plan, every part of it, and now it was complete. Nira and Metal Beak activated the final stage. The bats began moving toward the helpless guardians, hundreds of them, closing in slowly. Outside the cave, Soren saw them gathering. He looked around at what surrounded him. The trees, the fire burning in the forest below, a lamp hanging from a hook on the cave wall. Ezelrib's voice came back to him. Feel what's around you. Use what's there. He told Twilight, Digger, and Gylfi to hold the bats off as long as they could. Then he grabbed the lamp and dove toward the burning forest below. He flew between the trees as fire roared on both sides of him. Branches exploded. Heat pushed against him from every direction. He moved the way Ezzelrib had taught him, not fighting the chaos but reading it, finding the space inside it. He came through the other side with the lamp burning and flew straight back into the cave. He released the lamp into the mechanism holding the Fleck compartment open. The compartment collapsed. The magnetic field cut off instantly. Every guardian on the ground gasped as their strength returned. They stood. They looked at Soren. Ezzelrib looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "The battle isn't over." The guardians rose together and met the Pure Ones in the air above the mountain. Swords and talons, fire and wind. King Boron was grabbed by two Pure Ones simultaneously. He spun his body in a tight circle and threw them both away. Nyra came for him directly, and Ezzelrib appeared from nowhere and blocked her charge with a single fast strike. In the middle of the sky, Clud appeared. Soren flew straight at him. He called his brother's name. He told him it was over. He told him to come home. Clud drove his talons into Soren's chest and threw him into the burning forest below. Soren grabbed a branch to stop his fall and hung there while the fire raged around him. Clud came after him again, diving hard, fast, furious. He said this was his moment to prove he had always been better, that he had never needed Soren's help, that everything the Pure Ones had given him was more real than anything their family had ever offered. Soren waited until Clud was almost on him and then moved. A single clean wing strike that sent Clud spinning. Then he grabbed his brother's leg and held on, trying to pull him away from the fire. Clud twisted and snapped and tried to break free. His wing hit a tree at a wrong angle. Something cracked. Clud fell toward the flames. Soren reached for him. His talons found nothing. Clud disappeared into the fire below. Soren hung in the air above the burning forest with a burning branch in his talons, and nothing else. Then he turned and flew straight for Metal Beak. Inside the cave, Ezzelrib was on the ground. Metal Beak and Nyra stood over him, both of them together, taking turns striking him down every time he tried to rise. When Soren arrived and hit Metal Beak with the burning branch, the villain barely moved. He grabbed Soren and pinned him easily. Nyra pressed Ezzelrib to the floor. Metal Beak raised his talons over the old guardian. Then Soren twisted free. He didn't know how. He just did. Ezzelrib felt it and moved at the same instant, kicking upward and catching Nyra under the wing with enough force to throw her sideways into a gap in the rock. She landed hard. Her wing gave out. She was done. Metal Beak turned from the old guardian to Soren. He was still enormous, still stronger than anything Soren had faced. He advanced slowly, the way powerful things move when they are not afraid. Soren let the burning branch fall from his talons. Metal Beak reached him and pulled back for the final strike. Soren dropped. He fell to the bottom of the cave, grabbed the branch from the stone floor, and swung his leg upward in the same motion. The burning branch caught Metal Beak directly in the chest. The leader of the Pure Ones staggered. Then he fell. The cave went quiet. The Pure Ones looked at what had happened, and Nyra, broken-winged and barely standing, called the retreat. The soldiers turned and fled into the dark. The battle was over. The guardians returned to the great tree, carrying their wounded and their freed owlets. When Soren landed, the entire tree came out to meet him. Boron and Baron named Soren, Gylfi, Digger, and Twilight the newest guardians of Ga'Hoole. Mrs. Plithiver wrapped herself around Soren's neck and stayed there. Eglantine ran to him and held on. His family was alive. His friends were beside him. And the thing he had believed in his entire life, the thing everyone had told him was just a story, had turned out to be real. He had not just found the guardians, he had become one. But in the smoldering forest below the mountain, something moved. Clud pulled himself out of the ash. His wing was broken and his body was burned, but he was alive. He moved slowly through the wreckage until he found something lying in the debris. Metal Beak's mask. He picked it up and looked at it for a long moment. Then he put it on. He swore that the Pure Ones would rise again, that he would find his brother, that every guardian who had stood against them would pay for what had happened here. The war was not over. It had only just begun.